Lila, my mom said she wants to talk to you about the inheritance. You should call her. My husband, Jake, told me a few days after my dad passed away. What? I asked, shocked. My dad had just passed away, and I was still grieving. Jake seemed so casual about it, like it didn't bother him at all. Why is your mom talking about my dad's inheritance? I asked again, confused and upset. I don't know, Jake replied, just call her tomorrow. His attitude hurt me. When did he start acting like this? My name is Lila. I'm 48 years old and work at a company. I stopped working for a while when I had my son, Ethan, but I went back to work once he got older. My husband, Jake, is the same age as me, and we both work at the same company. We've been married since we were 22, and Ethan was born the next year. Half of my life has been spent with Jake. At first, we were really happy together, but over the years, I've started to notice more of his flaws. One of them showed up when Ethan was only 3 years old. Out of nowhere, Jake told me, I'm quitting my job. Why? I asked, alarmed. I don't like my boss, he said. I should be earning more, and everyone else is leaving for better jobs, so I will too. Jake is easily influenced by others, and this was another example of that. He did get a slight raise at his new job, but he didn't get along with his coworkers and found the work boring. Over time, he seemed to lose his energy and enthusiasm. These days, Jake's only joy seems to come from visiting his parents. They live about 30 minutes away, and he loves going there on weekends. I used to go with him, but it became too much, so I stayed home with Ethan most of the time. Jake likes meeting up with his old classmates near his parents' house, but I've noticed he doesn't have close friends at work. I once suggested, why don't we go out as a family instead of always going to your parents' house? Jake refused. Ethan doesn't like me, he said. So we rarely spent time together as a family. Instead, Ethan and I would often visit my parents. My dad was a smart investor and made money from real estate he bought years ago. He also worked a regular job, so we were pretty comfortable financially. When my dad bought a high-rise condo near our house, I asked him why. He said, you can see the fireworks from the balcony. Ethan will love it. He remembered how excited Ethan had been about fireworks when they saw them together. By the time my parents moved into the condo, Ethan was in high school. He loved the idea of watching the fireworks from there and visited his grandparents every year for the fireworks festival. Eventually, my mom passed away after being sick for a long time. It was sad, but I had time to prepare for it. Even after she was gone, we kept the tradition of visiting my dad for the fireworks. When Ethan turned 20, he drank with my dad for the first time during the festival. My dad was so happy. Jake only came to the condo once, and the next time he saw my dad was at my mom's funeral. Jake hasn't changed much over the years. He's still easily influenced by what others say. If someone talks about cleaning, he suddenly becomes obsessed with tidying up. If someone mentions a fun activity with their kids, he'll suggest we do it. Even though it's rare, he's not a bad person, and we've managed to live a decent life. But everything changed recently. My dad collapsed at work and passed away. His coworkers called an ambulance, but he didn't make it to the hospital in time. He had a heart attack. I'm grateful he wasn't alone at home when it happened, but it was still a huge loss. Jake and Ethan came to the hospital, but it was too late. We managed to get through the funeral while still grieving. Then something unexpected happened. Jake's mom called me. Lila, are you okay? She asked. I thought she was reaching out because she was concerned about me. But then she said, that high-rise condo is worth a lot because of the redevelopment happening in the area. If you sell it, you could make a lot of money. I was stunned. She kept talking. It's good that you don't have to worry about money for now since you're the only one inheriting. I hadn't even thought about inheritance yet. I was still mourning my dad. I held back my anger and told her, I'll think about it later. Then I ended the conversation. A few days later, Jake brought it up again. Mom wants to know if you've thought about the inheritance, he said. Why is your mom so concerned about my dad's inheritance? I asked, frustrated. I don't know, he replied. Just call her tomorrow. My anger towards my husband grew stronger. The next day, I couldn't bring myself to call my mother-in-law, but she called me instead. You're planning to sell the condo, right? Should I ask someone I know about a real estate agent? She suggested. I never said I was selling it, I said, surprised by her directness. It's better to do it quickly. Let me know if you need help, she said before hanging up. When Jake came home, I told him about the call. So, what do you want to do? Do you plan to live there? He asked. The location isn't ideal, I said. Maybe selling it is a good idea, I added, thinking out loud. After that, my mother-in-law kept asking if we had sold it or if I had contacted any real estate agents. Eventually, I had enough and told her, I have friends who are agents. This is my decision, so don't worry about it. What do you mean? We're family. You can ask us anything, she replied, calling me more often than before. To avoid any more pressure, I decided to consult with a real estate agent friend and move forward with selling the condo. When my mother-in-law called again and Jake came home afterward, I told them we were going to sell it. The calls from my mother-in-law stopped for now, and I felt relieved. 3 months later, I was informed that a buyer had been found. The price was much higher than I expected. Then, when Jake got home, he suddenly asked, "So, how much did it sell for?" Confused about how he knew, I lied, "I'm not sure, it hasn't sold yet." He grunted in response and started watching TV. I couldn't tell if he was genuinely interested or not. The next day, a Saturday, I was relaxing when the intercom rang. I opened the door to find my parents-in-law standing there. "Jake, your parents are here," I called to him, feeling confused. He invited them inside, and my mother-in-law handed me a piece of paper. I looked at it, suspicious, and realized it was divorce papers. "What's going on?" I asked, feeling shocked. My mother-in-law spoke sharply. "Lila, how long are you going to depend on Jake? He's been feeling overwhelmed living with you." There were so many things I wanted to say, but I didn't know where to start, so I turned to Jake and asked, "Is this how you feel too?" He nodded, confirming my worst fear. I couldn't understand why he was saying this now. Jake continued, "If we divorce and split the money, we can both live comfortably, right?" My parents-in-law nodded, and my mind raced. My real estate agent friend had told me the condo sold for a lot. Jake seemed to be seriously considering this idea. I was stunned. What were they doing? This was unbelievable. While I was still processing everything, Jake started filling out the divorce papers. I couldn't believe it. He was actually going through with this. Do my parents want Jake back at their house, or do they just want me out of the picture? I wondered silently. They must have convinced him this was a good plan. Jake probably thought he could get the inheritance if we divorced, but I knew that inherited property isn't divided during divorce, so I grabbed the divorce papers from his hands and filled them out myself. "I'll take care of it," I said, handing the papers back to him. Jake shrugged and said, "It's too much trouble, so just handle it. I'm leaving, but you can stay here." He left with his parents, dragging his suitcase behind him. "I'll come back later for my big things," he added as he walked out the door. It hit me then, he had planned this with my in-laws all along. He had been waiting for the right moment to leave and planned to abandon our home. There was nothing left to say to Jake, so I called my son, Ethan, and told him what had happened. What's going on?" Ethan was more upset than I was. But after a moment, he said, "Wait before you submit the divorce papers." I asked him why, but he didn't answer directly. I could tell he was thinking of something important. So, I decided to wait for Ethan's call. A week later, Ethan arrived at my house. "They were planning this all along," he said, laying several photos on the table. The pictures were of my in-laws' house, but it wasn't the old one I remembered. It was newly rebuilt. "A friend of mine lives near their house and took these photos," Ethan explained. "Your parents-in-law have been bragging around the neighborhood about recently rebuilding it." Ethan's friend had been doing some detective work and had more photos to show. Ethan threw another photo on the table. In it, my husband, Jake, was with a woman I didn't recognize. "My friend caught them together," Ethan said, his voice full of anger. The next photo showed Jake and the woman entering a hotel with their arms around each other. There were also pictures of them entering my in-laws' house together. I was stunned. Was Jake cheating on me? Had he been visiting my parents' house so often just to see this woman? I thought. And if they went into the house together, it meant my in-laws approved of the relationship. Ethan added more information. "Dad's going to get married soon. That's why they rebuilt the house," he said. I was shocked at how much evidence Ethan's friend had gathered. With all this, I could claim compensation and get a divorce, I decided. Of course, I wouldn't give Jake any of the money from selling the high-rise apartment. I started looking for a lawyer. The following weekend, Jake called. "Hey, why haven't you submitted the divorce papers yet?" he asked, sounding unusually angry. "Oh, I've been busy and can't make it to City Hall," I replied, staying calm. Why the rush? You planning to remarry someone? I teased him. This only made him angrier. What are you talking about? If you don't submit those papers quickly, I'll get a lawyer to force a divorce, he hissed. I knew I had struck a nerve. That's fine, I've already talked to a lawyer, I said, letting the words hang. A lawyer? He stammered. Yes, I replied, and I'm going to ask for compensation. His tone became panicked. Compensation for what? For cheating. Every time you went back to your parents' house, you were cheating. How long has this been going on? I sighed. No, he tried to explain. That was just a high school friend. I divorced, moved back to my parents' house, and it's only been about 2 years. He tried to justify. Jake seemed to realize he had said too much. Oh, 2 years? A high school friend? I repeated. Thanks for the useful info. He tried to laugh it off. Yeah, it's been 2 years, but we're getting married soon. If you don't submit the divorce papers fast, both our families have agreed. You're talking a lot, but are you okay? I asked, hearing his nervous laugh. There's no way you're asking for compensation for cheating. If we divorce, we'll divide our property. The money from selling your father's condo is a lot, even after dividing everything, so compensation would be small, he said. His nonsense was almost too much. Did you rebuild your parents' house with that money? I asked directly. I'm taking out a loan in my name, but if we divide the property, I can pay it all off at once, he said excitedly. Are you serious? My father's condo was sold, but that money isn't part of the property division, I replied. What? Jake wondered. Why didn't you or your parents know that? I asked, puzzled. You're so clueless, already rebuilding the house, unbelievable. I kept smirking as I checked the time. It was almost time. By the way, Jake, are you at home right now? I asked. Yeah, why? He asked, confused. Well, I'll be there soon, I added and heard the intercom buzzing. I told Jake to answer it. Ethan, Jake's surprised voice echoed through the phone. Ethan had gone to see Jake, along with a lawyer. Ethan probably wanted to say something serious as he mentioned he would also claim damages. I didn't care if Jake divorced me. I had few memories with him anyway, but if he tried to take my father's inheritance from me, I wouldn't forgive him. I heard Ethan's voice, firm and strong, over the phone. I have more memories with Grandpa, Grandma, and Mom than with you, Ethan said. Tears welled up in my eyes at his words. Afterward, I claimed damages for Jake's infidelity, and we got divorced. I later heard from Ethan's friend that the woman Jake had the affair with had been told he was divorced and single, so she sued him for marriage fraud. I also learned that my in-laws had just finished rebuilding their house, but were already putting it up for sale. Jake didn't seem to have quit his job, so he might have moved into company housing or back to his parents' house. It was an old building with a bad reputation for human relationships. Well, at least he has a place to live. I hope he works hard. I sold my father's high-rise apartment and bought a better located one with the money. Ethan mentioned that he and his girlfriend would visit me this summer because we could see fireworks from there. I imagined attending my son's wedding in the future and felt grateful for how much he had grown.